You know that feeling? That initial spark of excitement when you're planning a new trip. But then, slowly, a little cloud of dread starts to form. A quiet but persistent hum of worry that just gets louder and louder as your departure date gets closer. Well, you are definitely not alone. Today, we are going to tackle travel anxiety head-on. We're not just going to talk about the feeling, we are going to dissect it, understand exactly where it comes from, and, most importantly, give you a clear, step-by-step guide to turn that worry into real, earned confidence for every single journey you take from here on out.
This right here, this sentence just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? That one little question, what if something happens? It's like a thief in the night. It just sneaks into your mind and steals the joy right out of what should be an exciting time. It's a quiet question, but man, it creates a loud, persistent buzz of anxiety that can turn a dream trip into a source of constant, draining stress. It completely hijacks the experience before you've even packed a single bag. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're gonna put a name to that nagging what-if loop. Then, we'll dive into the science of why our brains get stuck there. Now, the real game changer comes next, when we figure out what our anxiety is really looking for. From there, we'll build a practical toolkit I call the Certainty Audit Plan. See how simple documents can boost your confidence, and finally, map out the road from fear to freedom.
Okay, first things first, let's really define this feeling, because it's so much more than just worrying. It's a very specific kind of mental pattern, a thought spiral that can feel totally relentless. So many of us get caught in this, often in silence, thinking we're the only ones. But it's a common, understandable, and most importantly, a manageable thing. This isn't a personal failing. It's just a pattern we can learn to spot and redirect.
The official term for this is cognitive overpreparation, and that description is just perfect, an exhausting mental rehearsal loop. Think about it like this. You're replaying the scariest part of a movie in your head over and over, but you never get to the end where things get resolved. You're just stuck on the jump scare. That's what this is. You're stuck on the what if I get sick or what if my luggage gets lost without ever getting to the part where you figure out what you'd actually do. It's all the stress of the problem with none of the progress, and that's exactly why it is so draining.
So why on earth does our brain do this? Why does it get stuck in this totally unproductive loop? It is so important to get this. It is not a character flaw. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a pretty predictable process happening in our brains. So let's look at the science, let's understand what's actually going on so we can start working with our brain instead of constantly fighting against it.
Okay, a huge piece of this puzzle is something called catastrophizing. This is basically your brain's habit of skipping all the likely, probable, and totally fine possibilities and jumping straight to the absolute worst-case scenario. So, a missed turn while you're driving in a new city isn't just a minor 5-minute detour. No, your brain flashes these vivid images of being hopelessly lost forever. This mental leap from a tiny problem to a full-blown catastrophe is like pouring gasoline on that little fire of anxiety.
Now here's the second piece of the puzzle, and this is one that can feel more intense as we get older. Psychologists call it a fixed time horizon. It's this deep underlying feeling that the stakes are just higher now. A mishap isn't just a funny story you'll tell later. A simple slip on a cobblestone street isn't just a bruise. In our minds, it's something that could change everything. When you combine that worst-case scenario thinking with this deep feeling that the consequences are permanent, well, you get the perfect storm for some really intense travel anxiety. This distinction right here is so important. On the left, you've got productive planning. This is all about action. You think, I need the emergency number for my travel insurance. So you find it and you write it down. Done. That one small action builds real confidence. Now, look at the right. Cognitive over-preparation. That's just spinning your wheels. You're just thinking, but what if I get sick? What if it's really bad? What if I'm alone? It's a purely emotional loop that just drains your energy and produces nothing. One builds a bridge, the other just digs a hole of anxiety. And the fallout from this cycle is real. It totally burns through your executive function. That's like your brain's CEO, the part that makes clear decisions and solves problems. The last thing you want to do is tire out the CEO when you're trying to navigate an airport. It also creates something called secondary anxiety, which is just cruel. You start getting anxious about being anxious. And the end result? Well, your enjoyment of the trip just plummets. And a lot of the time it leads to avoiding travel altogether. The mental price just feels too high.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. We've looked under the hood at the science. Now comes the most important part of our time together, the turning point. This is where we shift from just understanding the problem to actually solving it. And it all comes down to one core, really powerful insight about what anxiety really is. And here it is.
Anxiety isn't a weakness, it's a misguided search for control. When your brain is looping on those what-ifs, it's not actually trying to ruin your vacation. Believe it or not, it's trying to protect you. It's running all these threat simulations to get ready for danger. The problem is, it's using a terrible strategy. But once we realize that our anxiety just wants a real sense of control, we can stop fighting it, we can give it what it needs, but in a much smarter, calmer, and more effective way.
And that brings us to our solution, the Certainty Audit Protocol, or SAP. Think of it as a logical system to short-circuit that anxiety spiral. It's built on 3 simple, powerful rules. 1, the conversion rule. We take every fuzzy emotional what-if and we turn it into a concrete, written then what. 2, the master document. We get all of those solutions out of our head and onto paper, into one single, trusted place. And 3, the time-boxed worry strategy. We actually schedule a brief appointment with our worries, so they don't get to run the whole day.
Now, I know that might sound a little bit abstract, so let's get really practical. How do you actually do this? This whole section is about turning that theory into simple, clear actions.
Here is your 4-step action plan. First, before your trip, make a top 5 catastrophes list. Write down your biggest fears, and for each one, document the then what, the exact practical steps you take. This proves to your brain you have a plan. Second, schedule a daily 15-minute worry session. Give your anxiety a set time to run wild, but when the timer goes off, it's done for the day. This teaches your brain boundaries. Third, define your actionable control zone. Focus your energy only on what you can actually control, like packing a first aid kit or making copies of your passport, and let go of what you can't, like the weather. And fourth, use a cognitive interruption. The second you feel that spiral starting, literally say stop out loud or snap a rubber band on your wrist. That little physical jolt works wonders to break the mental loop.
So as you start doing this, something really remarkable starts to happen. It's not just about managing the anxiety anymore. It's about completely shifting your perspective on what preparation and confidence actually mean.
I love this quote. It's such a powerful reframe. Structured preparation is the highest form of competence and self-stewardship. Following this kind of protocol isn't a sign that you're anxious. It's a sign that you are competent. It's an act of taking real responsibility for your own peace of mind. It turns this whole thing from an act of fear into an act of strength, foresight, and self-care.
You know, the goal here isn't to get rid of worry entirely. That's just impossible. The goal is to transform it. You're taking all that chaotic, draining energy from anxiety, and you're channeling it into something structured, logical, and useful, your master document. And when you do that, you reclaim all that precious mental energy that was being wasted, freeing it up for its real purpose, actually being present and enjoying your trip.
And that brings us to our final section. We've gone from defining the fear to building a system to manage it. Now let's talk about the very first step you can take right now to start moving toward that feeling of freedom. If you only take away one thing today, please let it be this. The what-if loop is just your brain catastrophizing because it's desperate for a feeling of control. And so the solution is to stop wrestling with the emotional what-ifs and start systematically replacing them with documented, practical then whats. It really is that simple and that powerful.
So, I've got a question for you. Just take a moment, right now. What is it for you? What is your number one, most invasive travel fear? The one that always seems to pop up, that whispers in your ear in the middle of the night. Just identifying it, seeing it clearly, that's the first and most important step. And here is your first concrete action. Take that one fear you just identified. Write it down under what if. Then, right next to it, start documenting your then what. What's the first call you'd make? What info would you need? Who would you contact? This simple, deliberate act of turning that one fear into a written plan, that's you taking your very first step from fear to freedom.
As we wrap up, let's just zoom out for a second. Remember, that what-if spiral feels productive, doesn't it? It feels like you're doing something important, but it's actually a really high-cost defense mechanism. It's your mind's honest attempt to protect you from the fear of the uncontrollable, but in the process, it drains the very energy you need to actually live your life. And the most helpful insight, the real key that unlocks this whole thing, is the power of that simple conversion rule. The physical act of taking a swirling what-if out of your head, writing it down, and then documenting the then what in your master document, that is what makes all the difference. It takes the fear out of your head and puts the solution right in your hands.
And really, that's the whole point. By getting these fears out of your head and onto a clear plan, you secure real, objective control. You save your precious mental energy for wonder and discovery, and you ensure that your future travels, the ones you have earned and so richly deserve, are filled not with anxiety, but with confident excitement. You've got the tools now. You can do this.